So there's more twists and turns with that uh, settlement that took place with the president, the $10 billion lawsuit against the taxpayers' dollars, because he said there was, and there was a leak. There was a leak that came from an individual, which to this Charles Littlejohn. I'll show you that. In Trump's first administration, he was an IRS contractor, but he didn't just leak his information. And apparently, Bezos, apparently Musk, and over 405,000 individuals and institutions were also targeted. So it's not just one little group. I'll show it to you now. So here we go about that 1.8 billion it's called the Anti-Weaponization Fund as part of a settlement to dismiss the 10 billion lawsuit. He and his family against the IRS. Alongside this fund, the Department of Justice signed an agreement permanently barring the government, again, from auditing the past tax returns of Trump and his adult sons. That's part of the agreement. But do realize that this little Charles Littlejohn, what a name, contrary to the assumption that only the wealthy are targeted, about 89% of the affected accounts were business entities rather than high net worth individuals. So the scope, the contractor sold tax return information and disseminated to news organizations. The IRS ultimately mailed notifications to 405,427 affected taxpayers. So there was a lot of taxpayers involved. And I guess the breach primarily affected business entities such as partnerships, LLCs, and S corporations. They stated it wasn't just the wealthy that had a tax breach, tax leak. But here's the thing. I knew this was going to happen. I told you guys, if you have some sort of legitimized complaint against, you felt that you've been weaponized, whether it comes from the government or from any particular party affiliation, I say, in my opinion, jump on it now. Because I knew this was going to happen. And you know who only really makes out on this in the long run? Not that money won't be just dispersed by, a committee of five. One of them, I think, it actually has to do with somebody we appointed from Congress. Is that the attorneys eat up the costs? Yeah. There's a lawsuit, and it's like apples and oranges. The J6ers may feel that they were not properly represented in their cases because of all the media and all the negative news of who was up at the Capitol doing what, with the insurrection and the pummeling of the Capitol and the gallows and all that stuff. It also, which is true, rightfully so. There's not real fair representation when you think about the fact that it's public to it was, everybody knew. You across the entire country and the globe knew about what took place on January 6th. But now we've got the Capitol Police saying, I don't think so, because it's like discriminating against them. Listen.
Concerning the weaponization fund, the $1.8 billion slush fund that the Department of Justice is establishing, as this morning, Capitol Police officers are suing, trying to block
the
fund, and they actually have a pretty good argument. We're going to go through the lawsuit as to why the Trump administration may actually have trouble getting this fund across the finish line. It comes after a night of filed by two Capitol Police officers, including Harry Dunn, who is currently running for Congress in Maryland, against the President of the United States' Weaponization Fund. It argues that in the most brazen act of presidential corruption this century, President Donald J. Trump created a $1.776 billion taxpayer-funded slush fund to finance the insurrectionists and paramilitary groups that commit violence in his name. The fund, styled the Anti-Weaponization Fund, is illegal. No statute authorizes its creation. The settlement on which is premised is a corrupt sham, and its to design violates the Constitution and federal law. The fund endangers the lives and safety of plaintiffs Harry Dunn and Daniel Hodges, officers who defended the Capitol on January.
So Harry Dunn and Daniel Hodges were at the time of that insurrection. We did have over 170 officers injured. Some of them unalive themselves. Some of them were injured and lost things, like lost, would you like me to show you, just in case you're wondering? Hold on. So there's 140 or so that were injured, severely injured in this insurrection that took place. And there's different levels of severity. I think we need to realize that I knew that they were going to strike back over this, because let me just show you. Capitol Police Protesters used bear spray, chemical irritants, and laser pointers, which caused irritated lungs and temporary permanent eye damage. One officer permanently lost an eye. Lacerations and puncture wounds. Officers suffered deep cuts. One officer was stabbed with a metal fence stake. Officers were beaten and led with lead pipes, flagpoles, batons, and fire extinguishers. Some were also dragged, trampled, stuck with stun guns, and crushed in doorways. The extreme physical exertion trauma triggered medical episodes, including mild heart attacks and strokes. And of course, there were four Capitol Police that took their lives, which is really sad. They died by suicide. And one of them was Howard Libengood. He was U.S. Capitol Police. He passed away on January 9, 2022. Officer Jeffrey Smith. Officer Kyle DeFreytag. And Officer Gunther Hashida. I just want to make sure I get their names. This is really sad. Everybody has their story to tell. Those that were there will all be the only ones that know. Those that were involved in the Capitol Police. The people that came to the Capitol that day will be the ones that will recall what took place. But everybody has a story. Everybody has their own story. But it's a tragedy because people lost their lives. Even one of the protesters lost their life. That was Ashley Babbitt, Air Force veteran, fatally shot by U.S. Capitol Police officers while attempting to climb through a broken window. Speaker's Lobby, Roseanne Boyland, 35-year-old, died of an accidental drug overdose during a stampede and crush of fellow riders as a surge of police on the West Front. David D. Greason, the 55-year-old, collapsed and died from a heart attack outside the Capitol. Benjamin Phillips, the 50-year-old founder of pro-Trump website, died from a stroke. Wow, on the Capitol ground. Again, it is a mark in history, one that will be unforgettable. Like I said, this is going to be a mess. And where you stand on this, the images are indelible. This is, my gosh, imagine, it'll be in the history books for a very long time. These images, look at this. Our own people, and it just seems like so far away, but it wasn't. January 6, 2021 is not that long ago. But it's just, children will be, well, I don't know, will they be reading this in history books? Here they are. It is part of history. It is just another state in the course of the history of this country. And here's where we're talking about the Capitol Police that were injured in the, insurrection. As you can see, it was people of this country going up, and this happened. This happened. However you want to look at it, it happened. And both sides. When I say both sides, how about all of us, people, United States citizens, whether they were the ones that were going up on J6 or those that were defending the Capitol? They were casualties. There's the president. I guess he was watching it on a big screen TV while this was going down with his family and his cabinet. Those images will be indelible for all of us. But I truly believe that the fight will continue for that $1.8 billion. I don't think it's just something that is just going to happen.
Defended the Capitol on January 6, 2021 in two ways. First, by its very existence, the fund encourages those who enacted violence in the president's name to continue to do so. Dunn and Hodges already face credible threats of death and violence on a regular basis.
Wow.
The fund substantially increases the danger. Second, if allowed to begin making payments, the fund will directly finance the violent operation of rioters, paramilitaries, and their supporters who threatened plaintiffs' lives that day and continue to do so. To prevent the public financing of paramilitary organizations in the United States and to protect plaintiffs from further violence, the fund must be dissolved.
Wow.
Dunn and Hodges bring this case to obtain that relief.
There's a lawsuit.
In January of this year, Trump and his sons...
This is just like blood money. This is taxpayers' money. I just don't see this going anywhere. I see more conflict over this and more problems. Doesn't this country just had enough of this? Don't we have serious issues to her with like a